Julie Andrews, a name that instantly calls to mind the magic of Mary Poppins and the sweeping romance of The Sound of Music. For decades, she has embodied grace, elegance, and a seemingly untouchable perfection. But now, at 89, Julie Andrews has finally confirmed what many long suspected. Behind the flawless image was a woman facing struggles, pressure, and even moments of frustration. And her candid confession about what really happened on the set of Mary Poppins has left fans stunned. This is the side of Julie Andrews the world was never meant to see. Julie Andrews' story begins not in Hollywood, but in post-war England. Born in 1935 in Walton-on-Thames, Surrey, her childhood was marked by hardship and instability. Her parents divorced when she was young, and her early years were spent in a home filled with tension. Yet even in those difficult circumstances, her extraordinary talent began to shine. Julie was gifted with a voice unlike any other, a crystalline soprano with a 4-octave range. From a very young age, she was performing in theaters across Britain, singing alongside her mother and stepfather in vaudeville acts. It was during these formative years that she developed the discipline, stage presence, and resilience that would define her career. By the age of 12, she was already singing for the King and Queen of England, a sign of the extraordinary path ahead. Her big break came on Broadway in the early 1950s, when she was cast in The Boyfriend. Her voice and charm captivated American audiences, and soon she was starring in My Fair Lady as Eliza Doolittle, a role that made her a household name in the theater world. Though she originated the part on stage, Hollywood famously passed her over for the film adaptation, giving the role instead to Audrey Hepburn. It was a blow that could have ended her big-screen dreams before they even began. But fate had other plans. Walt Disney, who had been searching for the perfect star to bring Mary Poppins to life, saw Andrews perform on Broadway and was immediately convinced. She had the voice, the poise, and the warmth to embody the magical nanny. When Disney offered her the role, Andrews hesitated. She was pregnant with her first child. But Disney, ever the visionary, assured her that production would wait until after her daughter Emma was born. That decision not only secured Andrews' place in cinema history, but also revealed the respect Disney had for her as both an artist and a person. When Mary Poppins hit theaters in 1964, Andrews was catapulted into global stardom. Her performance earned her an Academy Award for Best Actress, and suddenly the woman once overlooked for My Fair Lady had become Hollywood's new leading lady. With her angelic voice, precise diction, and radiant presence, she seemed untouchable, an actress who could do no wrong. But beneath the surface of that perfection lay pressure. Andrews herself later admitted that the expectations placed on her were overwhelming. She had become the face of wholesome family entertainment, the embodiment of poise and grace. Every smile, every performance, every interview was scrutinized by the public, who expected nothing less than perfection from their beloved Julie Andrews. It was a standard no human being could realistically maintain forever. As she transitioned into films like The Sound of Music in 1965, the pressure only intensified. Maria von Trapp, like Mary Poppins, was another character audiences embraced wholeheartedly. Andrews had not only secured her place in Hollywood royalty, but also cemented an image of herself as pure, flawless, and untouchable. While she was proud of these roles, she also felt confined by them, wondering whether she would ever have the freedom to show her more complex human side, and this is where her recent confession takes on new weight. Because behind the scenes of Mary Poppins, the very film that made her a star, Julie Andrews wasn't always the picture of composure. She faced grueling physical stunts, moments of exhaustion, and even flashes of frustration. And in one particularly harrowing moment, that pristine image cracked, revealing a Julie Andrews that fans never saw, but perhaps always suspected was there, a woman who, like everyone else, had her breaking points. On the silver screen, Mary Poppins seemed effortless. Julie Andrews floated through London skies with her umbrella, danced with animated penguins, and sang lullabies that have lasted generations. To audiences, it looked like pure magic. But on the set of Disney's most ambitious project of 1964, the magic was built on long hours, demanding stunts and intense pressure. And in one unforgettable moment, Julie Andrews let slip the truth that even the most graceful icons are still human. The incident occurred during the filming of one of Mary Poppins's most famous sequences, the flying scenes. To create the illusion that Poppins could soar over rooftops, Andrews was strapped into a harness and suspended high above the set. Wirework in the 1960s was far from the high-tech systems Hollywood uses today. The rigging was heavy, uncomfortable, and at times unstable. For Andrews, who was expected to maintain perfect composure while dangling in midair, the strain was immense. One day, as the cameras rolled, the harness failed to lower her smoothly. Instead, she was abruptly dropped to the stage floor, landing with a force that knocked the wind out of her. The set went silent. Crew members rushed forward, horrified that the film's star, Disney's carefully chosen Mary Poppins, had been injured. Though Andrews wasn't seriously hurt, she was shaken. And in that moment of shock and pain, the prim and proper image cracked wide open. Julie Andrews swore, loudly, and not just once. She unleashed what she later described as a stream of very colorful expletives, words that had likely never been uttered in the immaculate world of Disney Studios. For those on set, it was shocking, and perhaps a little hilarious. The woman the world would soon idolize as the epitome of sweetness and poise was suddenly very, very human. Andrews herself has laughed about the moment in later years. In interviews, she admitted that her language in that instant would have made Mary Poppins herself faint. What makes the confession so striking, though, is not the profanity. It's what it revealed. For decades, fans had assumed that Andrews was exactly like the characters she played, endlessly composed, perfectly ladylike, immune to frustration. But in truth, she was an actress under enormous strain, balancing the expectations of a demanding industry with her own physical limits. The slip wasn't just about language, it was about vulnerability. Andrews had been holding herself to an impossible standard, the same standard that Hollywood and audiences placed upon her. That one moment of imperfection, an unguarded reaction to pain, wasn't a failure, but a glimpse of authenticity. It was Julie Andrews not as Mary Poppins, but as herself, a young woman under pressure, navigating the chaos of a Hollywood production and revealing her humanity in the process. What's equally important is how Walt Disney responded. Rather than reprimand her or insist on reshooting the scene immediately, Disney showed rare empathy. He postponed filming to allow Andrews time to recover, even adjusting the production schedule to accommodate her pregnancy. That compassion not only earned Andrews lifelong gratitude, but also created a working environment in which she felt valued as more than just a performer. It was, in many ways, the beginning of Andrews understanding that her worth wasn't tied to being perfect. It was tied to being real. For decades, Andrews never spoke publicly about the profanity-laced incident. It clashed too sharply with the carefully curated image studios wanted for her. But as she grew older and her career evolved beyond the confines of perfect lady roles, she became more candid. By admitting to that moment, Andrews wasn't tarnishing her legacy, she was enriching it. She was allowing fans to see that even icons stumble, and that imperfection is part of what makes greatness relatable. In fact, many argue that this honesty makes her even more beloved. Fans who once admired her as an untouchable star now saw her as human, someone who, like them, could be pushed to the edge and react in ways that weren't always appropriate. And in today's era, where audiences crave authenticity more, than polished images, Andrews' confession resonates more than ever. But beyond the humor of hearing Mary Poppins herself admit to swearing like a sailor, there's a deeper story here. It's about the cost of perfection. For much of her career, Andrews bore the weight of maintaining an image that wasn't entirely her own. That harness slip and the stream of words that followed was a crack in the facade. And sometimes, a crack is where the truth finally shines through. As Ron Howard once said about George Lindsay, legacy isn't just in the roles we play, it's in the humanity we reveal. For Julie Andrews, this confession is part of her legacy. It reminds us that even the most elegant, most graceful stars are flesh and blood, capable of frustration, exhaustion, and laughter at their own mistakes. And while the world may have been shocked to hear that Andrews once let out a string of expletives on Disney's set, perhaps the truth is that we always suspected it. After all, no one can be Mary Poppins all the time. When we think of Walt Disney, we often imagine the visionary businessman, the man who built an empire of dreams with an iron will and an uncompromising eye for detail. On the sets of his films, he was known to demand excellence, sometimes to an almost impossible degree. But behind the legend of the perfectionist was also a man who understood the value of nurturing talent. And perhaps nowhere was that more evident than in the way he treated Julie Andrews during the making of Mary Poppins. At the time, Andrews was not yet the household name she would become. She was a Broadway star, celebrated for her performances in My Fair Lady and Camelot, but she was still largely unknown to global audiences. When Disney personally recruited her for the lead role in Mary Poppins, many in Hollywood raised eyebrows. Casting an English stage actress with no film experience to headline a massive big-budget musical was a gamble, but Disney saw something in her that others didn't. He trusted her ability to capture both the sternness and warmth of the magical nanny. That trust was tested during the infamous flying accident on set, when Andrews' harness malfunctioned and dropped her unceremoniously onto the stage floor. In a less forgiving environment, such a mishap might have been brushed aside, with the star expected to get up, dust herself off, and return to work. Hollywood, after all, has a long history of demanding more from performers than is humane. Injuries were common, especially in the era before modern safety standards, and stars often pushed through pain to avoid slowing down production. But Disney responded differently. Rather than scold or pressure Andrews, he postponed filming. He ensured that she was checked on, and more importantly, he showed patience. For a production already costing millions of dollars, every delay meant risk. Yet Disney was willing to absorb that risk to protect his lead actress. Andrews herself later recalled how remarkable that was. Not only did Disney give her time to recover from the accident, but he also adjusted the filming schedule around her pregnancy. Imagine that. In 1963, a time when Hollywood was far less accommodating to women, especially expectant mothers, Walt Disney, of all people, showed grace. Instead of hiding her pregnancy or replacing her with another actress, he gave her the space she needed. For Julie, it wasn't just kindness. It was validation that she mattered, both as a performer and as a person. This decision would prove pivotal. By creating a supportive environment, Disney allowed Andrews to deliver one of the most iconic performances in film history. Without that grace, the role of Mary Poppins might have been overshadowed by injury, stress, or resentment. Instead, Andrews thrived, giving the world a character who balanced discipline and warmth, imagination and authority. Walt Disney's support also shaped Andrews' perception of Hollywood. As a newcomer to the industry, her early experiences would set the tone for how she navigated future roles. Working under a leader who demonstrated empathy gave her confidence to pursue projects that aligned with her values. It also deepened her loyalty to Disney, a bond that remained even after his death in 1966. Andrews often referred to him as a mentor figure, someone who not only launched her career, but also taught her that humanity and artistry could coexist in the film industry. For Disney, this was no small gesture either. The success of Mary Poppins rested heavily on Andrews's shoulders. Had she been unable or unwilling to give her best, the film could have flopped, jeopardizing the studio's finances at a critical time. Yet Disney believed in her so strongly that he prioritized her well-being over the production schedule. That kind of leadership is rare, even today. Andrews' gratitude for that support has echoed throughout her life. In interviews, she has often highlighted Disney's kindness during that period, contrasting it with less forgiving directors she worked with later. It was, she has said, a lesson in how respect fosters creativity. And perhaps that's why Mary Poppins shines not just as a technical achievement, but as a film with genuine heart. The love and respect behind the scenes translated into magic on screen. It's easy to forget that behind every polished performance lies a network of decisions, pressures, and compromises. Julie Andrews' confession about her un-Poppins-like swearing wasn't just a funny anecdote, it was a reminder of the human cost of performance. What transformed that moment from a disaster into a story of resilience was Walt Disney's response. Instead of pushing for perfection at any cost, he chose compassion. In the decades since, Andrews' legacy has been shaped not only by her talent, but by the way she carried herself, with dignity, gratitude, and humility. Much of that grace was learned from the example set by Disney during the making of her first film. The man who built an empire of castles and fantasies gave her something even more valuable: the freedom to be imperfect, the reassurance that she didn't have to embody Mary Poppins every moment of her life. That support resonates now more than ever. In an industry often accused of exploiting its stars, the story of Disney and Andrews is a rare tale of humanity behind the Hollywood machine. It reminds us that empathy isn't just morally right, it can also create lasting art. Without Disney's grace, Julie Andrews might have been remembered as a Broadway star who failed to transition to film. With it, she became Mary Poppins, and later Maria in The Sound of Music, cementing her place in cinema history. When she finally admitted decades later to that moment of swearing, it wasn't a scandal, it was a celebration, a reminder that even icons stumble. But thanks to Walt Disney's support, Julie Andrews didn't just recover from that stumble, she soared. By the time Julie Andrews admitted to the world that she once swore loudly on the set of Mary Poppins, she was already an icon. The confession didn't diminish her reputation, it enhanced it. Fans who grew up seeing her as Mary Poppins or Maria von Trapp now embraced her even more, not because she was perfect, but because she was human. And in many ways, that has become the final chapter of her legacy, not flawless perfection, but enduring authenticity. Julie Andrews' career has always been defined by dualities. On one hand, she embodied roles that demanded grace, discipline, and near-impossible levels of composure. Mary Poppins was the ultimate figure of order and magic. Maria, in The Sound of Music, radiated innocence and joy. These characters weren't just roles. They became cultural touchstones, shaping generations of childhoods and ideals of femininity. Yet, on the other hand, Andrews herself lived through setbacks, pain, and disappointments that revealed the complexity beneath the polished surface. The swearing incident may seem small compared to the grand sweep of her career, but it represents something far larger, the collision of image and reality. For decades, Andrews was forced to carry the weight of being everyone's idealized nanny or governess. People assumed she was as spotless, as endlessly cheerful, and as perfectly proper as the women she portrayed. That pressure can be crushing. By finally revealing that she too had moments of frustration, moments when composure cracked, she reclaimed ownership of her humanity. This authenticity resonates especially in the later chapters of her life. After the 1997 surgery that robbed her of her singing voice, Andrews could have withdrawn from public life. For an artist whose voice had defined her career, the loss was devastating. But instead of hiding, she redefined herself. She turned to writing, co-authoring children's books with her daughter. She continued acting, lending her presence to films like The Princess Diaries, where she delighted a new generation of fans. And through it all, she never pretended that the loss of her voice wasn't painful. She admitted openly that it broke her heart. That honesty made her even more beloved. Her confession about swearing on set fits perfectly into this arc. It's another reminder that her strength lies not in living up to an impossible standard, but in embracing imperfection. It's the same lesson she has offered audiences throughout her career, that resilience comes not from being flawless, but from moving forward despite flaws. Even today, as Andrews reflects on her life at 89, fans don't look to her as some unreachable ideal. They look to her as a woman who navigated the highs and lows of fame with grace, but also with candor. She has admitted to the challenges of balancing career and family, to the heartbreak of losing her voice, and yes, to the fact that once upon a time Mary Poppins let fly with some very un-Disney language, and somehow all of that only strengthens her legend. The legacy of Julie Andrews, then, isn't just in the roles she played. It's in the way she dismantled the myth of perfection without losing her dignity. She taught audiences that strength doesn't mean never stumbling. It means being honest when you do. She showed us that resilience can be elegant, that vulnerability can coexist with grace. In a way, her career has come full circle. The girl who once floated above a film set in a harness, trying to live up to impossible expectations, is now a woman who has embraced the fact that sometimes the harness drops, sometimes life hurts, and sometimes all you can do is swear and move on. That's not a failure. It's a victory, and perhaps that's why her story continues to inspire across generations. Julie Andrews didn't remain beloved because she was flawless. She remained beloved because she was real. Her imperfection became part of her perfection. So, when she finally admitted the truth, that yes, she swore during Mary Poppins, she wasn't tearing down the legend. She was deepening it. She was showing us that even the most magical icons are human beings, complete with fear, frustration, and a sense of humor about their own mistakes. And in a world where celebrities often hide behind carefully crafted images, that honesty is nothing short of revolutionary.